Hey folks, my name is Jackie Zoe with PolarStar Cybersecurity Group. This is going to be the first of 5 about SOC 2 preparedness. If you are going through your SOC 2 audit for the very first time, this is really great guidance. If you are thinking about doing it, this is also really great guidance. So please watch the entire series. It's going to help a lot. So SOC 2 preparedness, what leaders need to know to get audit ready. So first things first is the agenda. I'm going to walk you guys through what SOC 2 is. Right? What are the benefits of SOC 2 compliance? What are the compliance requirements? Outside of the compliance requirements, what are the leadership commitment requirements that you're going to need to be able to get this across the line? And then, of course, some details around timeline, costs, and decision points. These are just all considerations that you want to be aware of as you go into this, what I would say is an investment. So what is SOC 2? It is a voluntary auditing framework, and I really do want to underscore voluntary because this is not something you have to have. Now, it is something that many SaaS companies believe they have to have for strategic reasons, which we will walk through in more detail, but it is voluntary. It stands for System and Organization Controls 2. What does that mean? Well, it was developed by a group of accountants. The reason why it was developed by a group of accountants is because the rise of cloud, the rise of SaaS, that particular business model, businesses needed a way to essentially get the trust that they need, that the partners that they're working with, the vendors that they are getting into agreements with, are securely managing their customer data. The genesis was to help address growing concerns over data security, privacy, and risk management as cloud services became a lot more common. Now, right, we don't even think about it, but at the time of this creation, it was kind of a newer thing. But now it's all over the place. So one thing I want to really underscore is that it is not pass-fail, even though I know people talk about it as though it is and it feels like it. The truth of it is that it is an attestation report that provides an auditor's opinion on your internal controls. So it's a list of controls, and through those lists of controls, auditors will test those controls and provide their opinion and findings. So here are the type of auditor opinions. There are unqualified with issues, qualified, disclaimed opinion, and adverse. So what does that mean? How does it translate to this idea of pass-fail? So this is how this is typically mapped back to this idea of pass-fail. So unqualified with issues just means we got no opinions, everything looks fine and dandy, right? Qualified is usually, hey, there are some things that we have found. These controls don't necessarily match what you said you're going to do. So it's fail-ish because there are a lot of big companies that have qualified opinions, yet their customers will still work with them. So again, not pass-fail, just simply opinions. And how those opinions are read is really up to your prospects and customers who are asking for this SOC 2 report. Disclaimed opinion, adverse, typically means that your controls that you say that you have don't necessarily mesh with what exactly you're doing. So you might be wondering, Jackie, what do you mean by all those things? So let's get into detail, what it is and isn't. So just to be very clear, it is an opinion, a report about control design and consistency. It has nothing to do with security excellence in any way, shape, or form. It is a matter of, do you have it and can you prove it, right? Do you have governance, repeatability, auditability, evidence? Those are the things that auditors are looking for when it comes to SOC 2. It is not a certification of good security. So they're not measuring maturity of your security practices. They don't care about quality. They don't have a pass-fail tier, as I mentioned before. There's no grade and there's no score. I think there's a lot of misconception around pass-fail and the SOC 2 compliance stuff. It's got nothing to do with it. If you truly look under the hood and understand what it is and how your prospects are looking at it, this is truly, right, the factors that they are trying to determine. So what controls are they looking for? So when I say, hey, it's about control design and consistency, these are the particular controls that they're looking for. These are the kind of trust service criteria. There's security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. There's only one that's required, and that is security. Depending on your business model and the kinds of prospects that you're getting and what they're asking for, you may say, hey, I want to also do availability. I may also want to do confidentiality. In a different video as part of this series, I will go into these in detail, but just know these are those criteria, and only one of them is required. Within these criteria, there is type 1 and type 2 SOC 2. So what does that mean? Type 1 is, let's just say, the easy one, right? All that auditors are looking for is that your controls are designed appropriately. Certification is a point-in-time assessment, so they're literally looking, right, and the time span in which I'm looking at, do your controls match what you say you have? The purpose is really for you to be able to show prospects that there is intent towards becoming SOC 2 compliant, because really the trigger for why a lot of customers or a lot of SaaS folks are doing SOC 2 is because somebody's asking them for it. Understand this takes 4 to 6 weeks if you're audit ready, and we'll get into what that means. Type 2 is really testing whether or not controls are operating effectively. Certification is based on a 3 to 6 month assessment, and the purpose is really to show your prospects that there is operational discipline within the security arena. So remember, I talked about how SOC 2 is testing for governance. It's basically testing whether or not you say or whether or not you do what you're saying you're going to do. Is there trust there? Can I trust that what you're saying is accurate? That's really what your prospects are truly looking for when it comes to SOC 2. Now, in terms of quality and excellence, there are other certifications for that, but SOC 2 at a bare minimum is that you're doing what you're saying you're doing. Now, type 2, 6 to 12 month time frame, depending again on audit readiness, and it does take up to 6 months to evaluate control operations over time. So because they are measuring operations and whether or not it's effective, there is going to be a longer time span in order to do that. So why does SOC 2 even matter, and when should you do it if that's something that you're thinking about or that you've heard of? So SOC 2 is really just your ticket into the arena in order to play with bigger prospects, bigger customers. So in that sense, it accelerates revenue, right? Enterprise customers require it. It helps to reduce security questionnaire friction. Enterprise customers ask for it because they've got their own risk management they have to do. They've got their vendor management they have to manage. And SOC 2 is just, in a way, a tick on the box for them. There are other things depending on their maturity that they're looking at, but SOC 2, bare minimum. Market positioning. So for for organizations, right, with market that have SOC 2, it really is signaling maturity. And oftentimes it is a competitive necessity in B2B SaaS, because if one of your competitors have it, they will have a leg up. So that means that you are going to want to have it as well, again, to play with those enterprise customers. There is an element of risk and governance to it because SOC 2 does force operational discipline, and it improves audit readiness for future frameworks like ISO, right? If you want to expand internationally, that is a very strong one. It does have a little bit of quality associated with it, right? But it helps to set up those foundations. And then, of course, board and investor signaling. It shows that you have a scalable governance foundation and helps to reduce enterprise risk perception. And underscore perception because, as we all know, SOC 2 is not about quality, but the fact that you even have something that is trackable, that has evidence, that means that you have a program in which you can improve. Because if you don't even have that in terms of basics, you got nothing, right? You got nothing that you can actually improve upon or assess. So this is bare minimum. If you do SOC 2 well and you go through this process with the right intent, it can actually become an operational advantage rather than a cost. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations do not do this, arguably correct, and so they do view this as a cost or a tax to their business. So what is the right time for certification? Here are the trigger indicators. So more often than not, you've got enterprise customers asking for SOC 2. What they care about is type 2, but it will typically prompt some sales leader to ask your chief revenue officer, your CEO, CTO, hey, do we have it? If we don't have it, we got to get it if we need to be able to win this deal. So that will usually push those things along, but we'll talk about later what the expectations are from a timeline. Now, if you're looking into SOC 2 early on, before you even have a whole bunch of these questions, you are ahead of the pack because you're already expecting, hoping, planning, right, to have enterprise customers into the fold. With that in mind, SOC 2 is going to be a requirement. So you have some freedom or flexibility to set it up the right way without a whole lot of time constraints or pressure. Now, you've got sales cycles that are stalling in procurement. Now, the reason why they're stalling in procurement is because procurement does have a security assessment they have to do. Remember, your prospects, they've got to assess the risks of their vendors, right? Supply chain risk has become a bigger topic. So understand that that's what they're looking at. Now, are they doing it effectively? Are they doing it well? There's no comment on quality there, but without SOC 2, right, it's hard for them to collect the information they need. It's hard for them to get the verification or trust they need in order to go to bat for you, right? So remember, they're trying to go to bat for you, and having SOC 2 just makes it easier for them to do that. You are preparing for Series A, B plus funding. Again, in order to win enterprise deals, you usually have to have this. So investors will be asking, what is your path towards it? Because that is what unlocks, right, more money. You're expanding into regulated verticals. In a way, you have to have that because they have a higher risk surface area, and so you're going to have to conform. Or you're handling sensitive customer data, and there are different kind of compliance aspects that you need to take into account. All in all, if you do have security questionnaires coming in and they're slowing down your revenue and it's taking your team a really long time to be able to address them, it's time to think about SOC 2 and start preparing. So let's say you are starting to prepare. What is actually required? What is the operational reality for your path towards this SOC 2 report and having it available? So you got to first determine which categories are in scope. So type 1 or type 2, which one are you doing? And then, of course, which of these categories below are you going to then have within scope? Our recommendation, always just start with security if it's your first time. You don't really need to go overboard. In the next couple of videos in this series, I'll talk you through what to think about if you are thinking about expanding it. You're going to also need, so let me go back real quick. That's what you're going to need. Now, what I'm going to talk about are the specific requirements strictly for security, because that is required. So for the security category, they will be asking for evidence-based information on the following: access control, formal onboarding. I won't go through this, but feel free to take a screenshot of it. What's important to note is that you can't just have a knowledge base of these policies. You need to have proof that you are consistently executing. If you're doing type 1, a knowledge base, having those controls designed, sure, that's fine. But as you and I both know, as we discussed, type 1 doesn't hold a lot of weight. It's simply just, hey, we're going to get our type 2. So you need to have proof of consistent execution. And we'll walk through what that means. So executive leadership does become a necessity when you make the decision to invest in having a SOC 2 report. And it's really the only way forward. So my recommendation is do it for the money, not the certification or the report. If SOC 2 is what will open the door for bigger, better deals, invest accordingly. What deals can you win with SOC 2? If you are not investing the time and the money and the resources to get that return, that's on you, right? That's a strategic decision that as a leader, you need to make intelligently. So executive sponsorship, cross-functional ownership, and operational transparency, these are really the 3 pillars you need to be looking into and laying the foundation for as you go into this SOC 2 process. So executive sponsorship, you will want CEO/CFO support. One or the other, probably both, because you will need budget approval in order to make this happen. There are a lot of things that need to occur in order to get your company ready. And then you do have to prioritize it from an organizational standpoint, right? There are all of these different priorities that your organization has in terms of pushing out certain functions, having really cool certain types of events, investing in your sales team, so on and so forth. You have to put the same level of rigor around the priority for SOC 2 because this is an investment you're making for your future self, right? In terms of unlocking bigger deals. You will need to look into cross-functional ownership. This is not just a security thing to own. If you are just having security own it, you're in for a whole lot of pain because especially for smaller companies where SOC 2 is newer, security doesn't really hold the type of political weight within an organization. So that is why executive sponsorship is so important because if this is to truly be a part of your culture and something that you don't have to manually maintain, It's got to come from the top. And that's why you hear, or if you Google, what is SOC 2, this idea of tone at the top. In fact, it's one of the controls, is really important and something that they test. So from a cross-functional ownership standpoint, here are the different teams that are usually involved. These are the teams that auditors will be reaching out to and interviewing. And these are just examples of what they'll be looking for, right? And what they'll want to be discussing. Next, we have operational transparency. So the reason why this is an important pillar is because auditors are going to be interviewing team members. They will be sampling evidence and they will be reviewing system configuration. So if your operations around security are not transparent, they're not clear across the organization, you are going to fail in this area, right? Remember, it's not pass fail, but you're going to get some exceptions here, or some qualified opinions on how your controls are working. And that is something that you don't really want to bother with if you can help it. And you can help it. And this is what, this series is all about. So what do you need to prepare? I'm going to present to you a phased approach to getting your SOC 2 report from an auditor. So remember, it's about governance, not quality. So here are the phases. These are all the things that you need to do up to the point where you engage an auditor. Phase 1, scope. What are you assessing? Make sure you're matching your maturity and you're not taking on more than you can chew, because you can and will probably do a SOC 2 report regularly, right? Readiness assessment. Determine whether you have what you need in order to meet the scope that you've selected. Based on that, you'll likely have a gap assessment, and so you'll want to fill those gaps and control and implement the controls associated with it. Implement missing processes, formalize documentation. And once you have all that ready to go, that's when you want to then engage an auditor, a CPA firm, and provide what it is that they're going to ask for. Again, in this series, I'm going to walk you through each and every one of these phases in more detail so you know exactly what you need to prepare for. Here's the expected timeline. So for all you leaders out there who maybe got a sales VP said, hey, do we have SOC 2? We need it now to close this deal. Forget about it. You are not going to get SOC 2 within the time frame that is requested, especially if you've got competition out there that already has a SOC, to be able to win that deal, assuming that is absolutely mandatory. Now, you could do a whole lot of finagling and say, hey, we're in the process of, but at the end of the day, it is up to your prospect on whether or not that is okay and whether or not your product warrants, right, them waiting. So it's a trade-off, and it depends on the value you're able to actually bring them. So the SOC 2 is not what necessarily loses the deal, arguably. It's whether or not your product can actually do what they say, and if they can find a very easy replacement or substitute for the time being. And my argument is it's not a security thing, it's a maturity thing. So here's the expected timeline. You want to get SOC 2. Scoping is going to take 1 to 3 weeks, depending on the alignment that you have with your leadership. If you have any debates on what that scope is, I have seen these things extend out to 2 months. All right, just going back and forth on what should be in scope. Now, once you have what is in scope, you've got everything you need to determine whether or not you're ready. So readiness can take 3 to 4 weeks. Usually this is an area where you will engage a partner like PolarStar to help you determine what your readiness looks like, because that readiness will then give you a blueprint or roadmap into what controls need to be implemented. That implementation often takes 4 to 12 weeks, depending on how tight your team is. Now, the reason why it can extend is because if you got your engineering team focused on a whole bunch of stuff and this SOC 2 is not prioritized, it will take a very long time. So that is why executive sponsorship is so critical, because if you don't prioritize this is very easy stuff to say, we'll just do it later. Yeah. And so once all of that is done, you want to then go into the audit. Now, it's important that you want to keep the phase 1 through 3 pretty tight, because as soon as the audit hits, you want to avoid as much drift as possible, because drift can and will occur for immature organizations even during the audit. So keep it nice and tight. Make sure your team is on top of their stuff, because as soon as audit comes, they're going to be asking how well adopted all of these things are. Hopefully well, if you do this correctly. So scoping, what are you certifying and why? I'll go into all of these in details in the next video, but essentially the output of this is a system description draft, and this is going to be part of the SOC 2 report. These are all things that you control. These are all things that you are the one kind of positioning. And if you need help, right, that's where you bring in an external partner like ourselves to help you organize all these things so that you're engaging the auditor in a way that benefits you. We then have readiness assessment. So this is going to determine whether you'll pass cleanly or suffer some pain. So this is a pre-audit diagnostic where we take a look at what gaps you have, what controls do you have, map it to the trust service criteria within the scope that you've selected, and identify any risks. It's really important that we have an evidence framework set up. What this is really a pipeline of evidence. So knowing where to get it, how to get it, what to expect from it is important, because through your interviews and sample report collection, you just want to make sure your team internally know exactly where to go. That helps to reduce the time a lot in terms of the audit chunk of time. Then we want to do control implementation. This is where you convert all of that documentation, all those gaps into consistent behavior. Underscore here, operational behavior, right? Because controls are not just the technical controls, they are also the operational controls, right? Are you assessing things regularly? Are you doing things as you say that you will be doing them? I'll go into this in detail in the next videos that you guys can watch, but understand that it's not simply just a technical control. And this is why it cannot just be a security thing to own, even though security is the criteria. And then last but not least, audit. Now, this is when a CPA firm enters the picture. They don't enter the picture until a couple months later when you have all this stuff prepared, right? So once you engage a CPA firm, there will usually be a kickoff call. There'll be a series of events that happen. I'll walk through those in detail in the next videos that you can watch. But here are 4 main things for you to take out of it. So the core pillars to compliance. If you focus on these, what I'm about to share, your life will be a lot easier when it comes to your SOC 2 report. And this is why maturity matters more than documentation. So the 4 pillars are governance foundations, technical foundations, operational foundations, and just having a realistic sense of how long this is going to take. Beyond the checkbox, this is really how maturity happens. So from a governance foundation standpoint, you want to have clear system boundaries. You want to be able to convey and communicate what systems are in scope and what are not in scope, right? The broader it is, the harder it is to really narrow your audit, which will make things a little bit more difficult and make things more difficult for your engineering partners as well. Within that clear system boundary, you should be able to have defined data flows, and every control needs to have an owner. They have to. So just keep that in mind, because that is something that auditors will look for. And to be honest, this is also a signal of maturity generally. If it's whoever, that's not a very mature organization because there's no audit trail. And then a risk register. You also have to have this even if it's basic. In my next videos, you'll see kind of what basic means, what is the minimum requirement to meet that. We've got technical foundations. So these are centralized logging, MFAs enforced, documented change management. These are the foundations that you should have just to have a baseline maturity. Like, we are ready to go to that next level. Operational foundations, having a plan for incident response, having some semblance of security training that you can track and say, hey, it's been done. Vendor list with risk categorization and business continuity planning. If these are immature, if any of these operational foundations are immature and you're unable to execute them consistently, let's say, the timeline to compliance expands significantly. Now, arguably for a smaller company, immature, that is first going through the SOC 2, auditors will tend to be just a little bit more lenient because they'll take these things into account. But your prospects will have a better sense of, right, what's real, what's fake, what's good, what's bad, right? Because they have seen this a lot and they have pattern recognition there. And then realistic timeline expectations. For type 1, expect 2 to 4 months total period. Type 2, 6 to 12 months total, right? If you prioritize, this is how long it takes. For anyone who's like, we can get it done faster for you, that's when you want to put into question how well though, right? If it's just a checkbox, fine. You can do it really quickly. Understand there will be a tax on your organization later on to maintain this so that you can get your SOC 2 report again, an updated one. Realistic planning does require a dedicated internal owner. So even if you do engage someone external like PolarStar, you will still need somebody internal who knows where all of this information is, who all the right people to ask are. Expect 0.5 to 1 full-time employee required. you'll need budget, and you'll also need leadership bandwidth because there will be larger questions around the tone at the top, around policies. What you'll notice is that auditors will want to see that leaders are aware of the risks that exist. Are leaders reviewing this regularly? Are they approving it regularly? Yeah? So those are things to keep in mind. Here are some cost considerations. Now, I haven't put in exact numbers, but if that's something you guys are interested in, please feel free to reach out. We're glad to chat through because it really does depend in many cases, depending on your size, your maturity, the quality that you're looking for. Essentially, what you want to take away is that SOC 2 compliance isn't a side quest. It is a strategic investment, and you need to invest accordingly. Yeah. So there are things like readiness consulting. There are automation tools that if you're like, hey, I want to purchase an automation tool, that's an additional cost. These are not necessary, but there are certain things that you can purchase to help make things a little easier. There are audit firm fees. Those are things that those are required. You're not going to be able to get rid of those. Internal labor, and then remediation investments. Now the first two, readiness consulting, compliance automation tools. You could technically do all of this yourself if you'd like to. Audit firm fees, there's no getting around it. Internal labor, there's no getting around it. You will have to invest in closing gaps. So which is more expensive to your business? That is really the question you want to answer. SOC 2 or stalled enterprise deals? It really depends on where you are trying to take your company in the next 3 to 5 years. And that's really what you want to be investing in when it comes to the SOC 2 report. Here are some common pitfalls. These are easy to fall into traps. If you do any of these, it's just going to be a bad time for you. So if you treat SOC 2 auditing as a documentation exercise, awesome, you've got a bunch of paper, but they will still test whether or not you are following it. So you still got to take that into account. You're underestimating evidence requirements. These evidence requirements are testing you say you're going to do. Do you do what you say is on the documentation? There's a whole lot more there that auditors do ask for. I think that's why there are some vendors out there that are making a lot of money off of it, is because evidence requirements feels really difficult. We can make it easier, so come talk to us. We'll walk you through and look at the later videos, and we'll try to simplify it as much as possible. But evidence requirements, there's more of it than you think. It's not just screenshots. If you're starting too late in a sales cycle and you're hoping, hey, if we do this, we're going to win this deal, don't even bother, as I've mentioned before. If you're over-scoping unnecessarily because you're like, hey, this is a better signal, if you're not ready, don't do it. It's just going to be a harder time. And if you don't have a clear internal owner, this thing will absolutely fall flat. So prioritize accordingly. SOC 2 fails when it is a side project. So this is a strategic business decision to be made. If it is, invest. If it's not, our recommendation is just don't do it, right? Here's the success criteria to know that you are ready is when controls are operating consistently, evidence collection systematic, leadership understands your risk posture, and audit surprises are minimal. You can do this through some dry runs of evidence collection, and sales can confidently position security maturity. If your sales team can confidently share with your prospects where you guys are, you're in a really good place. That's a really good kind of external test to see where you are. Now, this stuff does take time, and as we've mentioned, it's a maturity journey. So don't take it too seriously. SOC 2 is, after all, about governance, and it's not so much about quality. Here's the decision framework for leadership. Feel free to take a screenshot. If this is a conversation you're actively having right now, this is arguably very helpful in determining whether or not SOC 2 is strategic and whether or not it's just optional. So in summary, revenue enabler, governance foundation, maturity signal, that is what SOC 2. The question is not, can we pass the audit? The question is, are we ready to operate at enterprise standard? That's the real question. Are we ready, right? Because if you're trying to pass it and you're not ready, it's a whole bunch of security theater that is just a tax on your business. So thank you guys so much. We know what it takes to get through this stuff. We are your partners in security. If you have any questions, please do reach out to us, PolarStar Cybersecurity Group. Go to our website, check things out. But we would love to have this conversation, provide a little bit of guidance, and help you determine whether or not you're ready to start engaging in this readiness portion of SOC 2.